Hey, what's going on, guys? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Black Shark 4. Now, this is not the Pro model, and I purposely chose the non-Pro model here because I've tested a lot of phones with the Snapdragon 888, but I haven't tested any phones with the new Snapdragon 870, and that's exactly what we have in the Black Shark 4. Now, along with the phone, I also picked up the new Black Shark Fun Cooler 2, and basically this just straps to the back of the phone itself to add cooling, and it uses Peltier technology. If you're not familiar with that, we'll talk about it in a second, but I want to get into this phone here because I've been super excited to test out this new Snapdragon 870. If you're not familiar with the Black Shark brand, just keep in mind these are Xiaomi phones. This is their gaming line of phones. They also have Poco, Redmi, Xiaomi, and Black Shark. They did include this protective back cover. I wouldn't call it a case, it just kind of snaps on the back, but that's a nice little plus for a phone like this. And here it is, the Black Shark 4 non-Pro model. This does have a 6.67-inch Super Amoled display running at 144 Hz, so we can get that really smooth experience out of it. And it tops out at 1300 nits of brightness. It's just booting up right now, so I can't change the brightness, but we'll take a look at it in a second. Another awesome feature of the Black Shark 4 is the included charger and how fast this thing can charge up, because they do include a 120 watt hypercharger, and this can charge the built-in 4500 mAh battery in 17 minutes, which is absolutely amazing. So yeah, I do like the look of this phone. They offer it in a few different colors. And around back here, we do have a triple camera setup, a 48 megapixel, 8 megapixel, and a 5, and this will shoot 4K 60 FPS video. USB Type-C with video out. They've also left that headphone jack, and we have a dual stereo speaker setup, a speaker on each side. Over here on this side, we have our power button / side-mounted fingerprint reader, like we're seeing in a lot of the newer Xiaomi phones. And on the other side, we have our volume rocker and a SIM card slot. Unfortunately, this does not support a micro SD card. As for the specs for the CPU, we have that Snapdragon 870. This is an octa-core CPU, but that biggest core is running at 3.2 gigahertz. The GPU is the Adreno 650. You can get this in a couple different RAM and storage variants, 6, 8, or 12, and they're all using LPDDR5. As for storage, 128 to 256, and it's using UFS 3.1, so it's super fast. This thing has a beautiful 6.67-inch Super AMOLED display at 144 Hz with up to 1300 nits of brightness at 1080 by 2400. And of course, we have that built-in 4500 mAh battery with 120 watt fast charging. They're actually calling this ultra charging. Now, since this is a gaming phone, they have added in some really cool gaming features like these pop-up side buttons here. We have 2 of them. And they're physical buttons. A lot of the other gaming phones have these touch buttons, but it's really nice to have something physical to mess around with, and you can actually map them to basically anywhere on the screen per game. The Black Shark 4 doesn't have a built-in fan or anything like that, but it does use a liquid cooling chamber inside, and I opted to get their new Fun Cooler 2, which is really awesome. It uses Peltier technology. Basically, what this does is extract heat from one side. So we have a heatsink and fan. That side's going to get hot, but that fan's going to cool that heatsink off, and the other side starts to get really cold. I've seen it go as low as 3 degrees Celsius. And the cold side's going to make contact with the back of the phone, keeping the device nice and chilly. Only downside to something like this is you do have to be connected to external power because it does pull a little bit of wattage. But it does have RGB built in, Bluetooth, and an OLED display letting us know how cold it's getting on the other side. And we can control all of this from the Black Shark 4 over Bluetooth. Not sure if you can see it that well, but we do have RGB built in and that OLED display. And I've seen it go as low as 3 degrees Celsius, but I just plugged it in here. But what this thing is doing now is cooling this phone down. And if we enter the Black Shark menu by holding both of the trigger buttons, we can actually go over here and control how we want this to work. Always leave it on the maximum coolness, but you can also control the RGB and everything like that. Definitely not a great device for on-the-go gaming, but when you're sitting at the house and you have an external battery or a power adapter to plug into, it will make a difference keeping this thing nice and chilly. So the first thing I wanted to do was run a few benchmarks. First up, we have Geekbench on the far left, single core 1002, multi 3307. Not bad at all. I also ran 3D Mark Wildlife, which is a Vulkan benchmark for the GPU. Total score 4,333. I tried to run the 3D Mark Slingshot Extreme benchmark, but after it was finished, it just said maxed out. And the final one I ran was Antutu with a total score of 693,112. So like we saw, the Black Shark 4 does have these pop-up triggers, and if I hold them, it'll bring me into Shark Space. You can also just enter it by hitting the app on the main menu. But there's a lot more to Shark Space than just these accessories that you can add over Bluetooth. I'm going to go ahead and start up a game. And once we're in a game, if we swipe down from the top left or the top right, it'll bring us into the settings. These are our gaming settings, or the Shark Space settings. There's a lot of great stuff in here. You can set up a macro, you can set up call blocking and things like that, but my main favorite thing here is the on-screen FPS counter. This is a real-time FPS counter. You can also add battery temperature or the CPU speed, which I do have enabled here. So I always have this going, but we can also go in here and change the performance settings per game. Basic setting here, we got 3 of them: balanced, solar core, and ludicrous. And when you enable this for the first time, it will tell you to attach that cooler because it does get quite hot. But this is going to enable the max GPU and CPU speeds. We can also go through and change the refresh rate per game. And we have some quality settings here. You can go custom high quality, or you can just leave it at normal. You can always block Wi-Fi, you can block Bluetooth, calls, and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of settings here when it comes to gaming. I do have these triggers set up in Minecraft. Now, this is not a game you really want to use these for, but you'll see it running in PubG and Call of Duty Mobile in a second. But when it comes to a game like Minecraft running on a phone like this, I mean, it's running great. We're well over 100 FPS at 26 chunks, and if you do want to run this at 144 with a couple dips every once in a while, take it down to 12 chunks and it'll do it all day. When I'm filming the screen here with my camera, you will see a little bit of banding, but you do not see this with your naked eye. It's just that refresh rate isn't matching up with the frame rate of my camera right now. Moving over to something a little more demanding, here we have PubG, and in the settings I do have the FPS set to extreme, but it's only running at 60. I thought we could get this at 90, but the game itself needs to be updated to support this phone and this chipset. So you're going to be stuck at 60 right now. Hopefully in the future we can get it up to 90, and I'd say at medium settings it would run at 90. Right now we're at high settings and it's running at a smooth 60. Every once in a while you will notice a dip, but I mean, this is fully playable on the Snapdragon 870 in the Black Shark 4. And I do have these triggers set up, one for aim, one for fire, and we also have another little setting in here which I personally like setting up for PubG and Call of Duty Mobile, and that's an on-screen crosshair so it stays right in the middle where you're going to be firing at. I also wanted to test Call of Duty Mobile. This is maxed out on the graphics settings and the FPS, but unfortunately we're still only running at 60. I have had this run at 90 on other phones. I just believe these games need to be updated for the 870 chipset. But other than that, it's running great here, fully playable. And finally here for native Android gaming, Genshin Impact. And if you play this on Android, you know how demanding it can be. It even gives the Snapdragon 888s a run for its money on high settings. So with this one here, I'm set to medium, but we're getting great performance. We're at 60 FPS, and you will see a dip every once in a while. Even on the Snapdragon 888, I see it dip, so I think this is performing well. So one thing I always look for in these newer Android devices is display over USB Type-C, and this Black Shark 4 does support it. You can use an adapter like this, USB Type-C on one end, HDMI on the other. You can plug it into your monitor or your big screen TV. But for this video here, I'm just going to be plugging it into this USB Type-C portable monitor. And this is the Pepper Jobs battery-powered portable monitor that does support touch. So I can control the Android device from the screen itself. Now, if you plug this into your main TV in your living room using an HDMI adapter, it's not going to work this way. But you will get audio and video out on a big screen. So we've run some benchmarks, tested out some native Android games, and this thing's performing really well, but now it's time to jump right into some emulation and see what this thing can do. Now I will have a full emulation video coming up, so if you don't see it tested in this video, just let me know what you want to see in the comments below, and I'll throw it in the next one. First up, we have PSP using the standalone version of PPSSPP using the OpenGL backend, and I'm at 5x resolution, no hacks, no frame skip. This is Soul Calibur Broken Destiny. It's actually an easier one to run, so let's take it up a bit to Ghost of Sparta and see what it does. Same exact settings here, 5x resolution, no frame skip, no hacks, and it's running great with OpenGL. I didn't even have to go in and test Vulkan because it's running fine. And these are some of the harder games to emulate, so I mean, if you want to go any lower end with PSP, you could probably jack this up to around 8x resolution, Keep in mind, your screen's not going to support that kind of resolution, but it will do it. Next on the list, a little bit of 3DS using Citra. Here we have DOA dimensions. And just like every other device I test, when you play through the first time, you're going to get some stutters because of that shader cache, but you should get pretty decent performance after those shaders have cached. And keep in mind, the Citra team is still working on this Android version here, so it's getting better and better. Next up, Gamecube with one of the harder ones to emulate on mobile, which is F-Zero GX. We're running at 60. It does dip down to around 59 when there's lots of effects on screen, but seriously, if I didn't have that FPS counter on screen, I'd never even notice it. The Snapdragon 870 is handling emulation like a champ. And finally, at least for this video, we have some Wii emulation using the Dolphin emulator, Sonic Colors, and this should be running at 30 FPS. We're right there on the edge, but it's fluctuating between 29.5 to 30. I unplugged everything, restarted the emulator, and tried it on the built-in screen, and it's still doing the same thing. Now don't get me wrong, this is still playable, and again, if I didn't have that frame counter on, I'd never even notice it. I think it comes down to the version of Dolphin that I'm using, which is the latest as of making this video from the official website. So in the end, the Black Shark 4 is definitely performing really well. Now I chose the Black Shark 4 over the Black Shark 4 Pro specifically for this Snapdragon 870. I've tested a couple phones with that 888, and it's definitely the best ARM chip that I've ever tested on my channel, but this 870 is getting really close in real-world gaming and emulation. I'm a big fan of all the gaming settings that they have built into this thing, and I'm really glad that they added that FPS counter on screen, because when you're playing native Android games, most of them don't have an FPS counter, and if you download one from Google Play, it's really only going to show you the refresh rate of the screen and not in-game frame rates, so that's a big plus in my opinion. It's definitely a great performing device, and I will have at least one more video coming up. I'll do a full emulation test. We'll test out a bunch of stuff, even PS2, even though we know that emulator doesn't run well on most devices. If there's something you want to see running in that video, just let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in picking one of these up, I will leave a few links in the description. But that's it for this one, and like always, thanks for watching.